Well, we're back after this morning talking about the back to school refresher. This afternoon, we are going to be talking about some of the third parties that are going into the schools to perhaps teach the things that maybe your child's teacher is uncomfortable with. So, my name is Jana London, founder of the Natural Women's Council. For anyone who hasn't tuned in, and Eugene Garvin is a retired director of an engineering firm who does much of our research for the Natural Women's Council. So we have been getting many reports from parents across Ireland and also in Northern Ireland of third parties that have been coming into the schools to teach the subjects such as sexual education, including topics like gender, identity, pornography, and masturbation, going into the class to teach those topics because maybe your child's teacher is not comfortable with them. And the memo that the ASTI, the Secondary School Teachers Association, sent to teachers does lay the groundwork and set the stall out for these third parties to continue to come in. The memo, although it looked positive on the surface, saying that if you're a teacher and you don't want to teach this, you don't need to. But they will be bringing now third parties in to circumvent the process, not engaging parents on this to teach those subjects that we have a concern with. So, Eugene, I'll turn it over to you to talk about some of the third parties that we have been made aware are in our children's school. So
There'll be the agencies you've kind of indicated there who may be coming in covering aspects of well-being, and they cover SPHE as well, or RSC. There's also the outside advocacy and activist type groups that come in, typically LGBTQ type activist groups that look to get access to the school on at different levels. So we'll talk about that. And then finally, there are groups that are engaged in like diversity, equity, inclusion, and coming into schools covering those as well. We don't have as much details of those. I've heard about some of them. We'll kick off with BelongTo. And I think there's an issue, particularly with BelongTo. They would have historically been, gay, lesbian support. And I think in that context, everybody would have supported them. But since the whole notion of queer and trans has kind of come on the table, non-binary identities, they've changed their emphasis. When they come into a classroom now, it's no longer the same as what it used to be. Let's take 2 minutes, Jana. We'll just play the video from this is from a lesbian who attended BelongTo. And she went to attend BelongTo because she wanted to meet other lesbians. She thought she'd meet them there and, get to know them and whatever, make some friends and whatever, which is fine. And you kind of would have expected that. And let's listen to her perspective on BelongTo for 2 minutes, and then we'll continue the discussion.
So I attended BelongTo when I was 17. I attended their Sunday youth group, which was for 14-year-olds to 23-year-olds. It was presented to me as a sort of gay club, and I wanted to meet other lesbians. But when I attended, almost everyone was identifying as non-binary or trans, and the only time that lesbians were talked about in BelongTo by the youth workers was when it was a trans lesbian, so a biological male. And I was called transphobic for saying that lesbians don't date males. I also witnessed lots of young lesbians who were maybe just a little bit of a tomboy identifying as non-binary or a trans man. I knew 16 trans-identified people while I attended, and 13 of them desisted. That's 81.25% of people who desisted, though BelongTo, while we were there, claimed that no one desists, no one regrets. BelongTo presents themselves as an inclusive group for all members of the LGBTQ acronym, but I felt very uncomfortable, unwelcomed and unwanted as a young lesbian. I wasn't allowed to voice my concerns. If I did, you'd be shouted down by your peers. Lots of negative talk about people who were not trans identified, and that was allowed to happen by these workers. They're in our schools, they're directing the SPHE courses, and it's a concern, and I just want to make sure that young lesbians know that they have the right to say no to to people who identify as lesbians but are.
Hopefully that gave you a feel for belong to. So they have changed their emphasis. They've become focused on trans activism, and they're putting that ahead of everything else. And they're pushing gay and lesbian young people to, adopt non-binary trans identities, and that's the paths that they're pushing them on. They're not accepting them as just the gay children that they are, that there's a gay boy or a girl or lesbian, and that's what they are, and supporting them in that.
So if you have a feminine lad or a tomboy girl or someone who may be gay, it's actually saying that's not allowed. You're actually in the wrong body. So it contradicts diversity in the real sense.
And there's an irony here, Jana, because BelongTo are one of the advocates for banning conversion therapy. This is the talk therapy that you might apply to a child that's got gender distress, and you bring them to a psychologist and they'd attempt to understand the root of that gender distress. That's BelongTo would consider that to be conversion therapy, yet they're engaging in conversion therapy themselves with gay and lesbian children. So do you want this group in your school? Seriously? Either for a stand-up week or for an 18-month engagement as part of their quality mark?
And parents watching this should be terrified. They should be angry, but they also have the power. And what can you do about it? On the naturalwomen'scouncil.ie website, under campaigns, there's a BelongTo letter you can send to your school. It will opt your kid out of this stand-up week and ask the school not to go for this quality mark program, which also funds BelongTo. It's over €800 to sign up to that 18-month indoctrination program.
The other thing they promote is this notion of allyship. So people need to be aware of what allyship is all about. So on the left-hand side here, I've got the ways to be a good ally. This comes from a BelongTo presentation. We'll have a link in the description. This is their words, right? And yeah, you can say be supportive, a good listener. Yeah, that's fine. That's good. But to send a child that's gender distressed to get support from BelongTo or TENI is not where you send them. These are trans activist groups. This is a child who's distressed for whatever reason. And there can be very complex reasons, nothing to do with gender identity. And that child needs proper psychological evaluation by a clinician, not by somebody from TENI. So that's the first thing. So bad advice there on bullet 3. But then look at the last set of bullets here. And this is all about political capture. This is to capture the friends, the relatives, the classmates of whoever has identified now as trans or non-binary. Mm-hmm. And you want to bring all of them in now as activists, supportive activists for, their friend or their classmate or their relative. That's what you want to do.
If your child in school says there are only two biological sexes and you can't change sex, or gender is a social construct, that child could be called a bully or not be a proper ally and
yes,
be in trouble with the school.
Yeah, that's one thing. But the other thing is, you see, if you look at the last bullet point there, so it's not just that you're going to be an ally supporting your classmate or your relative. You now need to get bought into the whole woke agenda and supporting marriage equality referendum. What next? Open borders, women's health. So you're being asked to become part of this broader social justice activism. So they're looking to capture people, young people, as activists. They're looking to capture teachers as activists. That's what they're trying to do when they get into the school. They want some teachers as well.
Yeah.
So this is what BelongTo are. They're a political organization now, pushing a political agenda.
And they were asking teachers to lie to parents. Remember, never forget, for our listeners, BelongTo were asking teachers to lie to parents.
You need to keep groups like BelongTo out. ShoutOut or another group. Again, they all look to come in and do these stand-up weeks. And they come in on the notion of diversity, equity, inclusion. You need to be more inclusive. Now, my first question always with that is, in what way are we not inclusive right now? Like, what are we doing in the school that is in some way excluding anybody? And you're asking us to prioritize one group over everybody else to be inclusive, which is inherently going to be exclusive to other groups.
Yeah.
That's the issue.
And they say it's because there's bullying. They say that, these poor Irish trans kids are getting bullied. Well, the trans identifying kids, they need obviously help, but I don't think Irish kids are naturally born bullies. And I wrote to Norma Foley's department and I asked them for statistics to say, okay, if you're going to go into schools and there's a bullying problem, can you show us the statistics that showed there was a bullying problem? And can you provide statistics that show since you've had the trans activist in, has bullying reduced or increased? Couldn't even provide stats or data. So they're saying there's bullying, but they couldn't prove that that had been happening.
This is bringing politics, it's bringing identity politics into the school, into the classroom. This is the problem. And it's seeking to basically prioritize one identity group over everybody else. But you've now got these people with an identity, a political identity, and it could be a racial identity as well. The same thing applies in the US. This is very bad in the US. This is where critical race theory kicks in the US, where you're giving a priority to someone based on their skin color in the classroom. We want to give a priority based on their gender identity or their sexual orientation, and we want to give them a special accommodation because of that. That's not equality. People need to be treated equal, and bringing those labels onto children in classrooms I don't think is productive or helpful either.
No.
There should be zero tolerance for bullying, 100%, and that should be enforced. But there's no need to bring politics and activism into the classroom. That's the issue. And it's been used as an excuse. I think we can see that, Jana. Unfortunately, the Canaltas program is just a vector for this.
Absolutely. Yep. And the kids getting bullied are the kids who don't want to participate. We had a parent contact us from Monaghan, and they were really concerned that the son was asked to wear a pink T-shirt to celebrate Pride or whatever the week of the flavor of the month was. And he said, I don't want to wear a pink T-shirt. I don't believe in this. And the teacher said, you're homophobic. You're a bully.
Now, the last group, before we finish this thing, I want to talk about other third parties. And this is other third parties that might be coming in to teach anything, but in particular, if they're going to be teaching CSPE or SPHE, because that's where there's gaps.
Yeah.
There's a policy document. We've a link to it and we've a page of it here. And there's an onus on the school to ensure that any third party is properly assessed and that the parents are kept fully informed and have visibility to what that third party will be presenting in the classroom. So that onus is on the school to do that due diligence. And we've seen issues. A very classic case, I think, came from the north.
I can share that quick story on that if parents want to hear what happened. So there was a parent that was very distressed that a third party had gone into the school and their daughter had come home traumatized, wouldn't talk to the parents about it, was visibly upset, crying. And what happened is the school was called Harmony School. I have no problem naming and shaming. So Harmony Primary School, these are primary kids in Belfast, brought in a diversity group called Still I Rise. And they have a website. Anybody can look it up, Still I Rise. And they're celebrating diversity with kids through storytelling. So they went into the class and they were recommended as well on their website. You can see they're supported by the likes of Belfast City Council, local businesses, NGOs, and Women's Aid and all. So they went in, and one of the books that really upset the child was My Shadow is Pink. And My Shadow is Pink is written and illustrated by an author called Scott Stewart. And it touches on gender identity, self-acceptance, equality, diversity, and all of that. And this child came home, and once they finally did, the girl talked to her parents, she thought she may be born in the wrong body after some of these books were read by Still I Rise. So I did a social media post, and the principal of the school contacted me to ask that I remove the post. She made a really bad mistake. She was off that day. Apparently, someone who contacted her and had a conversation with her, she said she was off that day. This group came in. It was recommended by Belfast City Council, and she didn't know about the material. And she actually sent me a copy on Facebook Messenger of the letter, the handwritten letter she wrote to all the parents apologizing. And she said to me, I'm a mother. This is destroying my life. And she wanted all the sympathy. And I said, people make mistakes. This is a learning lesson for you, but this lesson should be passed on to all the other principals and headmasters of schools around Ireland so they make sure they don't let people like Still I Rise in the school. So please come onto one of our podcasts and you can share your story and your lessons learned with other principals. And then she blocked me. I have no sympathy for that principal. She made a mistake. She harmed children, traumatized a child. I believe the parents may be seeing a solicitor, which any parent who has a child go through this, go see a solicitor and send a letter to that school, sue them. I have no sympathy for that principal of Harmony Primary School. She had more concern about herself being attacked and wanted sympathy, but did not have the courage to share her story with other principals so other children are not harmed. So she can cry those crocodile tears. I have no problem naming and shaming that school and any other school. So I ask any parent out there, if you have a third party going into your school and you find out they're teaching something inappropriate or your child comes home upset, you send the Natural Women's Council an email and we will be sure to name and shame them on one of our podcasts unapologetically. Child safeguarding comes first.
The general theme here that we're seeing is that there's an objective to destabilize children right now. And whether it's BelongTo or whether it's these other groups or whether it's, dare I say it, in our own classrooms now.
Yeah.
And I'll just throw up a picture here of, trans activists, etc. If you look at the picture, this is what they're trying to do to your child. They're trying to recruit them as a social justice warrior, as a social justice activist, to destabilize them so they even lose perspective of reality. And this is what the left are trying to do right now to our children in our schools.
Back in May, a parent got an email from the school to say that on Monday, the 13th of May, School Fitness Ireland is going to be providing their acclaimed workshops to 5th and 6th class in the school. And they were going to talk about puberty. That's okay. Physical changes. That's biology. Sexual intercourse, conception and pregnancy, relationships, consent, body image, social media, gender and sexuality, pornography, and masturbation. So a third party was coming into schools to teach your children about porn and masturbation and this gender cult. And the parent was very upset, sent us the email. I contacted School Fitness Ireland. I did a tweet on it. I spoke with Martin, who appears to be the founder, and I asked him, are you going in schools and teaching? And I read that email, and he got very defensive and said, well, who are you and why do you need to know? And I told him who I was and said, parents are upset. Are you teaching this? He neither denied or admitted. He said, well, I'm very upset that you sent a tweet at 2 a.m. and I'm getting a lot of hassle. And I said, well, I'll keep tweeting, no problem, at 2 a.m. And I did a tweet. And then what I did after talking to him is did another tweet at 2 in the morning and gave an update after my conversation with him. But he would not admit or deny. He basically said, you'll have to contact the schools. And he slammed the phone down on me. ASTI sent a letter to all teachers, which looked positive on the outside that, asking them, they don't have to teach it if they're uncomfortable or what have you. But this is where they're going to say, okay, the teachers aren't comfortable teaching it. We'll bring in these third parties to indoctrinate the children and sexualize the children and teach them the things that School Fitness Ireland or Still I Rise teach. So that's happening. It's rampant in England. Watch that space over here in Ireland. Third parties will be coming in to teach things that the nice teacher doesn't teach, and that teacher might go out for a coffee and not even hear what this company is doing to your children. On the letter they sent out to schools, they referenced the circular document. We can post the link to that. It's on the government Department of Education website.
Yeah, we'll have the link to that.
There's supposed to be a vetting process and it's supposed to go through the Board of Management. So that principal from Harmony School, she didn't, if they have the same policy up there, she broke it by not knowing what's being taught, by not having a teacher sit in, by not having the BOM look at it. So we ask everybody listening now, again, send us those names of those third parties and what they taught your child or plan to teach your child, and we will expose it and name and shame them unapologetically, anyone going in schools to groom your children.
Yeah. Well, the notion that those children were exposed to that without any parental visibility that was going to happen.
Exactly.
It's so outrageous. I mean, parents need to be engaging their solicitors. They really do.
Absolutely. My school has opt-out letters. I've had many conversations, and you can be sure that if any of this is, my children are exposed to any of this, there will be war.
Yeah, there needs to be. Now, people might ask, well, how come all this is happening? Don't we have a children's ombudsman? Isn't there TUSLA? Isn't there a minister for children? How come all this is happening? This is the issue we have in this country right now. Those people are not engaged at all with any of this.
No.
They don't want to know. They're supportive of all of this. They're supportive of the library books. They're supportive of the curriculum.
We have a minister for
Yeah.
children who deleted files of children in care. Hundreds of children have gone missing.
Yeah.
One was 14 years old and found in a brothel. And we have a minister for children deleting files and turning a blind eye on missing children. The Garda are turning a blind eye, the ombudsman. So if you think the authorities care about child welfare, you couldn't be further from the truth.
Yeah, we have a fundamental problem in Ireland right now with regard to the care and well-being of children. And it's a huge issue. And our state is totally has gone, have left. The adults have left the room.
Yes.
And they're using the excuses of inclusion and all of this. And if you say anything against it, you're hateful, you're far right, etc. They're gaslighting us all right now.
Thanks, everyone, for watching today's podcast on the third parties and some of the NGOs that are going into schools. If you're not comfortable with this, what can you do? Well, sitting silently is not an option. What can you do? You can write a letter to your school. You can go visit your school. You can present to your board of management. You can talk to every parent you know, because it's the school's duty of care to protect our children and educate them. We do not accept these third parties, these trans right activist groups going in to groom, and that's what is happening, going in to groom our children and lead them down a very dangerous path of ideologies and transgenderism. So there's a lot you can do. And if you feel this video would help other parents and teachers that you know, if you can please share it out far and wide. Also, to beat the algorithms on YouTube, if you can give this video a quick like and a comment with your feedback, and also subscribe, that will help us get more views to get this important information out to protect our children. Thanks, everyone, and stay tuned for the next episode where we'll be talking about some of the content that's still out there in the library books, and we'll talk about what's happened this week in our weekly wrap-up, which will come out later this week. Thanks for tuning in.